Hey YouTube land, Tyconders here doing another action figure review, and today we're having a look at something new but old. It is a retro carded, well, he's already out of the box, so I wouldn't say he's carded, retro version of the Adventures of Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And this is the main Indiana Jones himself. So what these are similar to the Star Wars retro collection stuff that Kenner, well, Hasbro, under the using the Kenner logo, have been producing recently. So it is a 1970s, 80s-ish figure based on how the old Kenner figures look. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this one is a new figure. They did do a Indiana Jones line back in the day, but I believe all the figures on that line were based out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you had characters like Salah, Belloc, Toth, you had the engineer guy, the big engineer guy. You had the Cairo swordsman, I believe, was one. You had Indy himself. There was only one version of Indy, I think. There were actually, that's not quite true. I think there was two versions of Indy. One of them had a similar action feature to this one, but these are newer figures, but based on the idea that if they had continued that line, these are kind of figures that would have come along. So in this wave, there is Indy himself, which is based on the ripped shirt version of Indiana Jones from Temple of Doom. Again, I'm not entirely sure if this one was already made from that line, but I believe he wasn't. And then on the back you have Indiana Jones and the other figure in the wave, which I know never had a figure until they did a kind of a modern interpretation of him, and then they've done this version of him, which is short round. So I believe these, you can see here, it has all the legalese stuff and just a small showcase of the two figures. There's no write-up on either figure. It's just exactly as they are shown. But I believe the original line only consisted of, as I said, the Raiders of the Lost Ark figures, because they're the only ones I can think of off the top of my head that had playsets. There was a playset of the Cairo, you know, where he puts the Staff of Ra. Actually, I think there was a disguise Indy. I think that was it. It was Indy with the robes. That was the other Indy figure. It was the kind of standard version of Indy with his more iconic brown jacket and hat. And then I think there was another version. And then this is I believe, an all new figure, but kind of utilizing a mixture of the original and the kind of retro look to him. So he does have a little action feature. I'm going to take he does come out with the one accessory, which is this knife. I believe it is from the scene, the final scene of, well, the last scene of the film, where he uses the sword as they're running away. He uses the sword to cut the rope bridge, and then everything is like, I think there's one or two scenes after that. But he does have an action feature, which is a spring in the arm, which allows him to do a knife slash attack. It does kind of catapult the knife if you do it too much, but he can do it. I think the other feature on the original one was you squeeze, I'm not sure if he squeezed the leg or you just pulled the arm back, but he was supposed to have the pistol in the holster and you'd fling the arm up for a pistol shot kind of thing. But these guys are very akin to the old Star Wars, Kenner Star Wars figures, with a couple of exceptions. It is interesting to note that this knee joint is actually something that was on the originals, and the originals do go back as far as the time of the Star Wars figures. It is interesting to think that Kenner never thought to incorporate this articulation into the Kenner ones. Now I can see why, or into the Star Wars line. I can see why they kind of didn't, because when you do the seated position, it splays their legs out really wide for some reason. I don't know why they did this. It's a kind of very V-shaped cut on the hip, so it's a very wide stance. I know there was a horse. I believe there was a horse in this line, so I think it was designed so that the character could ride on the horse. There was a couple of vehicles, I believe, as well. There was a truck. I know there was a truck, but I'm not sure how that worked with the that wide leg stance. It is quite a weird stance for the characters to be in. I don't understand why they just didn't do a straight T-junction or T-crotch style cut, so the figure's legs would go more out like this and bend at the knee like that in this kind of style. But just for a size comparison, we'll bring in this T800 endoskeleton, and we will show a size comparison with him. So he does stand around 3¼ inches. This guy does stand around 4. If you're curious about this fella, he was actually made way back in the 90s by a company called Toy Island, and if you're familiar with that name, it is the company that did most of the RoboCop figure licenses from back in the day. They did a lot of the, I believe they did do the TV series stuff, but they did a bunch of kind of, I wouldn't say pound shop style or, you know, discount style Terminator and RoboCop figures. They have very limited articulation. So articulation in this guy is a basic head swivel. You can go 360. Arms just rotate around for the right arm, but because this one has the gimmick in it, you can rotate it around, but it will push the arm into a different position. So it will, like, you can push it forward, back further, but it won't retain the same stance, I suppose is the best way to say it. He does have the standard Indy legs. I don't think they changed the legs because he has the area for the whip to go on, and he has the piece where the holster for the pistol would be, but he doesn't come with either of those accessories. As shown, his legs do kick forward and do have a joint. He does have a peg hole on the bottom of the feet, and he does have no waist articulation. He has a very kind of soft sculpted shirt on. You can just barely make out the pockets of it, but it is intended to be, as I said, that scene from Temple of Doom where he uses the sword to cut through the rope. You can even see he has the bandaged hand as well. So the one accessory I think they omitted from this guy, and it would have made sense if he had it, is if he had his satchel with those, whatever the magic stone things that were in the movie were in, because that was kind of an iconic piece to him. So just to show him next to another Indy figure, here is, I believe, one of the Crystal Skull figures. It's the older Indy, so his hair is actually a bit more grayed. But this is the kind of reimagining 3¼ inch, 4-inch scale line that Hasbro did for when Crystal Skull came out. It was a great line. Don't get me wrong. They did pour their kind of heart and soul into that line. They had a bit of cool characters. Again, there was some controversy with some of the characters that they released because they were released for other films, including the Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, where the main villains in that movie were the German army of the 1940s. So they were not well looked upon. And even by today's standards, figures are kind of frowned upon for that era, even though they are historical accuracy kind of thing. I wouldn't say, like, people love, I wouldn't say love, is probably a too strong a word, to appreciate the uniforms and the look of that era, but it was a fairly dark time, and people did some very nasty stuff from back in those days. So, but it is when the films are based on, the time period that the films are based on, and during that kind of war. So they are based during kind of World War II and the German army. So there is even a Indy in German disguise figure that was made back in the day. Just for another kind of basic 3¼ inch retro style figure, here he is with one of those D&D figures I reviewed recently. So you can see the scale kind of is in keeping with that kind of reaction style. Basically, reaction is a homage to what these figures would have been anyway. So all in all, he is a pretty cool figure. I might pick up some of the other figures in the line. I have found them over here for reasonably cheap. They're on kind of sale at the moment, so it is a nice line to get if you're a fan of Indiana Jones. As I said, there's not a huge amount of characters. You have, oh, one of the other original characters that was back in the original lineup was Marion, and she was, she had, I think she came with the Cairo playset as well. So there was like a Cairo playset, there was the Tomb playset, I think there was an Ark set as well. I believe that's one of the hardest ones to get. And there was the Tomb with the snakes, if I recall, as well. So there was kind of a couple of small play sets, and it didn't have a huge amount of stuff for that lineup, but they did have some kind of cool, interesting stuff. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this quick video review for good old Indy. Again, it's up to your own opinion if you want this style of figure. I know it's not for everyone's cup of tea, but I remember back in the day, I don't ever remember seeing those original Indiana Jones figures, even though they would have been out around the same time as the Star Wars figures. Most of the Star Wars figures kind of predate me, because when they were around, like, we did have a couple of discount stores that had old waves of Star Wars figures, and you used to get in stuff. So, but I would have loved to have seen some of these back in the day as well. But unfortunately, I never seen them in person. So when I saw this guy hanging on a shelf, I decided I was going to have a look at it and see what he's like. So he's not too bad. Very soft on sculpting. I know the original figures, just like with the original retro, or the original Kenner figures compared to the retro collection Star Wars figures, have very soft details as well, especially ones that are like one-on-one for their original Kenner counterparts. So newer stuff like the Obi-Wan from Obi-Wan TV series and the Vader from the Dark Times, they have this aesthetic style to them, but they're not based on the original Obi-Wan figure back in the day, which had a lot more sharper, crisper detailing, because these are, I'm not sure how they produce them. I don't think they're 3D printed. I don't know if they're like recasts of the originals, where in this case he didn't have an original figure to recast from. So it is kind of weird that there's the way they're made is softer. But other than that, they're not a bad figure. So all in all, he's not too bad. But if you like him, you like him. If not, as I said, it's up to yourself if you don't like him or not, or want to pick him up. But hopefully you enjoyed this little video of me rambling on about Indiana Jones and his action figure line. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Cheers, guys.